Alex here with a Perspectives video on family courts. Donna Wilburn, a licensed marriage and family therapist with Red Rock Counseling, is going to be interviewing family law attorney Romeo Perez, who is running for Department Z of the 8th Judicial District Court. Let's go straight into it.
All right, so hi there.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining me.
You bet.
I'm Donna Wilburn, licensed marriage and family therapist. I am a forensic provider in town, and I think we've met each other before through the court. So what I'm doing is I'm representing kind of the mental health community in learning more about how you guys can incorporate mental health or what your views are about mental health in the courtroom. So I wanted to, ask you some specific questions. But first, I'd like you to introduce yourself, what position you're running for, and let us know a little bit about you.
Okay. Well, my name is Romeo Perez. I'm running for Family Court in Department Z. That's one of the new departments.
Okay.
So it's the legislature opened up 6 new family court divisions, departments, because we have so many family court cases now. So I'm running for one of the open seats in Department Z.
So there's never been a Department Z before?
Never been a judge in Department Z.
Okay. How many of you guys are running for that seat?
There are 4 people in my race
Okay.
as of today.
Alrighty. So what about a little bit about why would you be a good candidate for that position?
Well, I've been practicing family law for over 21 years. So in my 21 years, I've practiced in all areas of family law, which is not only divorce, child custody, and child support, which is what a lot of people think of, but I've also done the guardianships. I've also done grandparents' rights. I've also helped in juvenile justice when the kids have a problem with the criminal justice system, and in the abuse and neglect or dependency area. So
Right.
I've handled all kinds of cases along the spectrum of the family law area.
So I'm not an attorney, obviously, and I don't know a lot. How can someone tell if one of the candidates is experienced in family law versus other types of law? Because to me, that would be an important part of being a family court judge.
Sure, I think that, well, first of all, I would point you to my website at www.romeo4judge.com. That'll give you some information as to what I do. I, of course, have been practicing law for 21 years, so I have a good reputation among the community for family law. My area has been primarily family law, but I've also done cases of domestic violence, DUIs, personal injury cases, even traffic tickets.
Right.
So my expertise is as broad as my family's, and that's kind of how it's grown.
So is there certain training or education that goes into being a good family lawyer?
Absolutely. We're required to take a certain number of hours a year in continuing legal education.
Uh-huh.
And I've always kept up with my hours. But more importantly, it's about meeting people and serving the people in their times of need. So when you come in for a divorce, I've been doing this 21 years. I have seen a lot of different divorces with a lot of different fact patterns.
Can you even guess how many divorces you've worked on?
Gosh,
Just
you know
a
what?
crazy
It's funny.
number.
I got into the Odyssey system, which is the court calendaring system in Clark County, and I typed in my name just as attorney record to find out what it said. It said too many pages to list. So, and that's
like
just
100? How many is that?
probably more.
Probably
Yeah,
more than that of
Sure.
actual family law divorce type cases.
Right.
Wow, good for you. So being in mental health, and I've worked with a lot of these divorce cases too, that there are certain components, mental health factors that affect things, whether it be how the individual's mental health affects their divorce or how the divorced or what kind of divorce affects the children. Do you guys get any kind of training regarding, mental health type factors in a divorce case?
Generally, the only training that we are mandated is the CLEs, the continuing legal education, and then it's up to us to choose where those hours are spent. Some of us, I spend time in mental health training because I think it's important, especially in my practice, which is the family law, not only dealing in divorces and breaking up families, but also in the abuse and neglect arena where we send tons of people for mental health assessments and help.
So you've chosen to get certain education or conferences or trainings regarding how mental health plays out in the cases.
Absolutely, it's so necessary to understand not only that we're sending people for these evaluations, but what do these evaluations mean when it's all over with? You've got to be able to address how we're helping people and if we can help the people.
Right. So an area that I work in that not tons of people tend to work in, is high conflict divorce. What do you know about high conflict divorce? What is it? How would you categorize it?
I guess the best way to put it is high conflict divorce is when people just are out to destroy each other. It's not even about the kids anymore. It's not about the assets. It's about punishing. And that is very destructive in that many times you put the kids in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
You put the children in the middle, and the longer a divorce lasts, the harder it is on the family. That's why it's important to have quick decisions. It's important to move the calendar along so that people can get closure. A high conflict divorce where you're putting kids in the middle, sometimes using therapists and sometimes even jumping from therapist to therapist
Mm-hmm.
because you don't like the answer you're getting. I mean, that's a form of abuse when you keep putting your own interest ahead of the best interest of the children just because you're angry at your spouse or your significant other. That's high conflict.
And you said something that was really important to me, and that's we want to get this resolved quickly, not prolong it, because I've seen attorneys out there who don't seem to prioritize, let's get to a resolution. It's almost if they want it to last longer, and I've seen that, and you're right, it doesn't allow everybody to get on with their life, including the children.
It's very, very sad. When I was told early in my career, I was told by a very prominent lawyer, Romeo, we don't get paid to settle, we get paid to fight. And I was taken aback, and I've never forgotten 21 years later that he told me that. And I said, no, you know what, I have enough work to do. I don't need to keep this case open.
Wow.
It doesn't make sense for the family and for the client to continue to pay attorney's fees and fight over things that can be easily resolved.
Right. Do you know anything about how children are affected by high conflict divorce? Have you learned that in any of your lab classes or anything?
Sure, because kids mimic what they see,
Yeah.
right? They also get sometimes manipulated against one parent, or they side with another parent, and it makes it very difficult to parent after we are all gone.
Right.
The judge closes the case and they have to move forward, but the damage gets done. And these kids end up growing up and then sometimes repeating what they see in their childhood.
Yeah, and you're right, that does. And it's triangulation to me that when they get in the middle and they're used as a pawn, that stress can be overwhelming to them.
Sure.
So when you were talking, you as an attorney, you've had many of these cases, try to get them resolved. How would you work with a high conflict case as a judge?
I think that I've seen some judges do really good jobs with high conflict cases. Sometimes that means we have multiple hearings closer together rather than setting them out every 4 or 6 months. I think it also depends on the attorneys, because attorneys who have more client control and can help resolve things, makes things easier. When you have a high conflict, I think a judge really needs to take control of what's going on, specifically when it has to do with the children. Money's money, assets are assets, the dollars you divide up. But the children have a lifelong lasting problem when a judge doesn't take firm control of a case, resolve it as quickly as possible with as minimum contact with the child. We generally don't interview children.
Right.
We definitely don't like to put them in the middle. They're not even allowed at the courthouse. And I think that's a definitely a good policy. They do end up at the courthouse, but they shouldn't be there because that's not their place. They need to be kids.
Mm-hmm.
So a judge needs to have a firm hand on those kind of cases.
So you think you can have a firm hand? Because I've seen judges get nervous when you got really emotionally intense, dramatic people in front of you. It can be intimidating and change how you maybe you thought you could be firm and now you're nervous about upsetting somebody.
That's kind of the balance that we have even as attorneys. Mm-hmm. Some of family law is theater. People want their story told, and sometimes that is the only way to have closure, is for a litigant to feel like you told a judge what a rat this guy is, and now that I know that somebody else knows what I know, I feel better. I think that
it's like a validation,
right,
at least like somebody heard me.
Sure, but at the end of the day, for a judge, the law is the law and has to be carried out. There are certain things in the law everything in the law has to be followed. It's a matter of how do you communicate that information to the litigant? How do you make them feel like they've been heard, understood, and then explain to them why the decision was made? You have to follow the law, but how do you communicate that is your decision is what I believe is important.
So as a judge, we are all human, and really, really upset people can affect us. How would you stay objective and basing things on the law when people are crying and yelling in front of you? Do you have like a coping skill for that, or a way to stay objective that you've worked with this and learned, or something like that? Like, how do you do that?
I think that's why it's so important to have had clients for 20 years. Because I've had clients come in and cry and yell and jump up and down and be angry. In any day, in the morning, you can have a client hug you and be as excited as they can be. By noon, you've got someone yelling at you. In the afternoon, all you can hope for is to end on a hug. I also think it's important to have kids. Dealing with my 12 and 14-year-old really gives you some coping mechanisms, because you have to negotiate with little scorpions. And they're scorpions. A friend of mine told me they're scorpions because they don't know how much venom to use, because they're baby scorpions. So they just use it all. And so having learned with how to handle my kids, also how to handle my clients over the last 20 years, gives me the ability to know what I've done right, know what doesn't work, and try to use that the best I can.
And that's funny, because I'm a grandma now, so I have two that I raised. And if you haven't raised a teenager or been really involved in raising a teenager, you may just give a lot of credit to things they say when they're really emotional. But if you have, you have more of a filter on, maybe they're just over emotional right now, might not mean exactly what they might not be saying exactly what they really mean.
Sure.
So tell me a little, I didn't know you even had kids, so tell me a little bit about have you lived in Vegas a long time? And it sounds like you have kids. How old are they?
Well, we moved to Las Vegas in 2004.
Okay.
I passed the bar in 2003. I worked in Texas. I've been licensed in
Okay.
Texas since 2008.
Okay.
So it's been over 21 years, almost 22 now in June. And we moved in 2004, at the end of the year. And when I decided to move, of course, I was bringing my wife, and then my parents decided to move, and my sister decided to move, and her mom decided to move. So we brought all of these people across the country.
Now.
Right. We
Like
had
the
our
whole
own
team.
neighborhood getting into Las Vegas. So I brought everybody across it, and at the time, Las Vegas was the center of the universe. It was 2004. We were booming. Things were great. There were not a lot of Spanish-speaking attorneys, and
I'm
I brought
assuming you
that.
speak Spanish?
I do.
Good.
Mhm.
So do we have other bilingual judges? Do we have any bilingual judges right now?
I believe Judge Ochoa.
Oh, right,
is
right,
bilingual.
okay.
Actually, Judge Potter is bilingual.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yes.
So you have how many kids and how old are they?
I have two children. My son is 12 and my daughter's 14.
So you're in the fun years.
I am in the fun years, and I hear that I will make it. So
You will survive.
I will survive.
Especially if you've learned how to not get too entrenched in their mood.
Right.
Good for you. Well, hang in there. Like
Thank
2
you.
more years. They say it's usually a lot better when they're 16, but you got a couple, 2 right in the middle of it.
Right in there.
Oh my gosh. So as we're looking at, your position as a judge, my, of course, concern is the mental health area, and I ask the community for questions. And a lot of them, they have different concerns, but as therapists, we see the folks from a different angle when they're going through a court case, okay? And it seems like in areas where we can help, or things that we can do to help you guys make a better decision, is sometimes dismissed. So I'd like to know how we can work better together, how we can help you. Is there training or certain things that we should get? And as a judge, are you even willing to work as a team with mental health providers?
I think that's a great question. Excuse me. Because so many times I have clients who come in who've been in a long-term marriage, and the first thing they say is, she's crazy, she needs to get a mental health assessment. Like, whoa, wait a minute. Okay, the judge is not going to order a mental health assessment because you, after 20 years, decided that she's crazy. So you've got to balance the objective information that you have with what your client is telling you.
Mm-hmm.
And then once it's determined that there needs to be some type of mental health assessment, or there really is objective evidence, then you take that to the judge, and then the judge says, okay, are we protecting, in this case, let's say dad, are we protecting the children? Because the focus is always the children. If the children are ever in danger, I think that you have to give that a second look for mental health, because you have to look at whether we can leave the children alone. Can, in this case, mom make decisions? Can she be a part of the children's case without the backup of dad?
Right.
So there needs to be some synergy in the family court to get these things resolved. And I know that people like to say, well, family court is a little different than criminal and civil court. Well, that's true, but you know what? The most personal of things happen in family court. You're affecting people's families, their children, their dog, their property, their businesses. So it does have to be different. It's not the cold, hard criminal law, the civil law, where people are fighting about dollars. Freedom's important, but we're also talking about children and lifelong decisions.
Right.
So yes, I do believe in some synergy. Ultimately, the judge needs to make the decision. I would never say that we would just release our decisions to the professional, but I think we need to rely on the professional to get us the information that we as judges don't have time to look into.
So
we
what
rely
would
on
you
the
look
mental
for in a
health.
professional that would make them, that you think their information is reliable?
I think it depends on the objectivity. I think when professionals provide objective information, diagnoses, without trying to interfere in the best interest determination that only a judge can make. I think that's very important.
Okay, so in what kind of case would you even work with a mental health provider? What kind of scenario would you actually bring them in?
Well, of these high conflict cases is one big area. I know that we've had cases in the past where we've had maybe some identity, sexual identity issues where the child is dealing with it and it's causing conflict amongst the parents because it's not something that parents want to deal with and they make it difficult on the child. I could definitely see using a mental health person to come in and maybe help the family understand what's going on with the child so that they can fix things rather than litigate over who's going to have custody and who's going to raise this child. I think we talk about how do we address the child, how do we address the issues going on with the child so we can move forward. The child grows up to be a stable adult, no matter what his decision is.
Right, on me personally, I'm solution focused, so I'm like, okay, we got things going on, but what do we need to do to fix the problem? So as a mental health provider, what are you looking for, education and background and training, things like that, you would say, okay, that one, I'll give credit to what they say.
There's a list, as you know, in the courthouse of providers who've been used for years. Some on the provider list are better, we've got better reputations, longer educations, and more testimony in court. I think those are the people that we look at first. I know you're very high on the list and usually one of the people that we spit out first.
I sound like a big mouth out there.
Well, no, but it's important to have somebody who's been there because you understand the court process. And it's not just somebody who's dealing with a private patient, not having to deal with court. Because I think court and litigation brings a different aspect or maybe provides a different lens to the litigant than just somebody who's looking for help.
So regarding that list, and it's the outsourced provider list that the Family Mediation Center has. It's not, you must use these people, they're just providing it as information.
Sure.
But in order to get on the list, you need a certain kind of training, you need domestic violence training, you need abuse training, you need to know about those dynamics. And in order to stay on the list, you have to maintain your credit hours, you have to keep getting education every year. So not that people have to use that list, but at least those that are on the list have been getting specifically forensic related training every year, and they met a criteria to even be on there. And that was a committee that it was Judge Moss and Palini, and we were trying to get some standards.
Great.
And so when you look at that, and for all of the candidates and judges out there, when you look at that list, those people have training. Are they the best or not the best? You don't know, but at least they have the training in how to work with forensic cases. It is a different ballgame, and I tell therapists that all the time. This is different. It's not so much nice and listen to feelings and stuff like that. You have to kind of be strong and have strong boundaries. And not be afraid of I call them haters, like there's gonna be someone who loves you and someone who hates you, pretty much on every case. So you gotta be okay with that. Yeah, same with you guys, like especially up there on the bench, you can have people who really hate you. Now, I've heard some stories about how those who did not like a decision might actually, want to take some kind of action to punish you for that decision. Have you considered that going up there? You're risking how your lifestyle is or anything? Might need a bodyguard or something?
Well, I hope not. Now, you know what? As a family law attorney, I've been, I don't know about threatened, but people get angry, and the pizza delivery guy to my house one day he says, "Hey, you represented my wife." I'm like, "Well, I'm not ordering pizza from there anymore." But I've had one where the person made an actual viable threat, and I had to call the police.
And that's on you as an attorney, not
right,
even a judge.
as an attorney, right, because she was not happy. And in family law, I guess my focus is to try to get people, I guess, equally unhappy. If everybody's equally unhappy, then you've done a good job, right?
That's an interesting way of looking at it. It's not to make everybody happy, it's to make them equally unhappy.
Right.
Okay.
Because it's hard to walk out of family court happy because if you've won everything, then somebody else lost everything.
Right.
And that's kind of a difficult position that it puts people in a corner and then makes things kind of unacceptable, and that's when people act out.
Right. But I've seen it, it's traumatizing sometimes to go through a divorce, and what people look like when they're going through it, that intense emotion is not necessarily how they are in real life after it's over, but boy, how it gets emotions up, and it can make people look not so rational.
Sure, and they say it's the good people on the worst day of their lives, right? That's what it is.
That's rough. So here's a question that came up too. So I've heard this. I don't know if other folks out there, but in family court, it seems like for some reason hearsay is given a lot more credit than in other types of courts, and just allegations can get people in big trouble even if there's no evidence to support it. Have you heard that? Have you seen that? Have you come across that in your cases?
The hearsay is allowed in certain circumstances, and depending on who's talking will depend on whether or not it's actual hearsay. So generally, in my experience, hearsay is a little more relaxed when it comes to children, right? When mom says, "My kids are telling me these things," judges will generally allow some of it on a limited basis. Some just say, "Nope, you can't do it because it's hearsay and I'm not going to hear it." And some judges let everything in. I think that sometimes when people talk about hearsay, we talk about motion practice. Okay. So when an attorney files a motion in family court, everything goes in. Where I'm going to say, my client says that this is what the kids are doing, and this is what has happened, and this is what the girlfriend said, and the motion is full of information. Some of it's hearsay. And the judge then has to look and see, based on this, what am I gonna listen to and what am I gonna disregard? He doesn't necessarily make an evidentiary decision based on the motion, but he can set it for trial. Okay. And many times judges will say, "Look, I see a lot of smoke, but I need to know if there's fire, so we're gonna have an evidentiary hearing." And sometimes those evidentiary hearings, if they're really hotly contested, will be quick. Well, even before the attorneys can get through discovery, judges want to know, is this true? Is this really going on? Because I have to do something. And some judges will accept that evidence as hearsay evidence to protect something, whether it's the children or an asset. If somebody says you're emptying the bank account, they will act to protect in the interest of not blowing something, not letting the kids be affected or letting all the money get blown out of the bank account or an asset being sold.
I've seen child interviews or brief evaluations used for, I need to see more information about this right now. So I would say one last question would be, and this is a hot topic for a lot of therapists and parents out there, okay? the rumors are when my child turns 13 or 14, they get to make a decision on where they want to live. That's going out there. I've had cases where kids are like 18 and can't make decisions.
Mhm.
They can have an opinion about it. But what is your point of view regarding visitation refusal, teens making their own decisions, or teen discretion?
So teen discretion is generally when the child is anywhere from 16 to 17 years old. I think the other thing that gets taken into consideration is the maturity of the child.
Mm-hmm.
My 14-year-old is amazing. She'll be great. She went home last night to do homework on a Friday.
So she's like a mature one.
Very mature. So it depends on the level of maturity of the child. At, I believe it's 12, children get to be a part of the decision, but it's not dispositive of the best interest. A judge can take notice. Sometimes we send them out for a child interview with Family Mediation Center. We get to hear about things, but we don't let them make a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we don't, I think, is because they're children. At the end of the day, it's our responsibility as parents to make those decisions. And even if the child doesn't want to go, unless there's some type of abuse happening on the other side, the abuse then comes from this side where we're not making them go. We're not encouraging them to go and have a relationship with the other parent.
So how do you enforce that? Because it's a child refusing to follow the rule, even if the parent's like, I'm encouraging them. How would you enforce that?
That's really difficult because that's when possibly a mental health person comes in, a professional who says, hey, this is what you need to be doing. Not only is it an order, but it's also because it's good for you. It's something that you need to be doing. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate that in these like high conflict cases, parents will say I'm supporting them, but not really be supporting them, not really be taking them to the drop off, or
Right.
telling them, hey, get your bag packed, it's time to go. That's not really happening sometimes. And I've had it in my cases on both sides.
Right. I've seen it be very subtle,
Mm-hmm.
the strategies to not quite encourage. So would you're saying, so for teen discretion, that you take into consideration the maturity, the factors, not just say, hey, they're 16, let them make the decision.
No, it's not an automatic, no. And the reason teenage discretion came about, it's not a law or rule or anything, it's about kids having their own lives at that age. 16, 17 years old. 18 is the hard line. They're no longer considered minors,
Mm-hmm.
but they are considered children. So they have lives. I mean, kids have sports, kids have pep rallies and all kinds of stuff at school. They should be able to do that. And if that's on the date that they're supposed to go with the other parent, then the other parent should take them. Those are the days that you're responsible for the child. And that's something that I think gets lost on parents when they say, well, mom put him in soccer and so I don't have to take him. No, that's not right. You need to take him to soccer because it's important to the child.
Yeah, to me, that's when a parent coach is in there going like, guys, let's stay focused on what's best for the child. So I want to let you go. I appreciate you coming in and talking to me and being brave enough to take this forum. If someone wants to learn more about you, get in touch with you, or just kind of look you up, how would you suggest they do that?
So my website is www.romeo4judge.com. I'm running for family court in Department Z. I'm trying to get out to a lot of different places to meet people. We're also on Facebook, Romeo Perez for Family Court Judge.
Okay.
Please look me up. We've lots of information there as well. And of course, emails and phone calls. I'd be happy to talk to anybody who'd want to talk about what's important to them in family court.
Well, I didn't have to twist your arm or anything. You're like, I'll talk. I'll come in. Like, yay. I appreciate it so much. Thanks so much
Thank you,
for
Donna.
coming in and talking to us. And hopefully we'll see you again.
Absolutely.
All right, have a good one.
Thanks.